Welcome back to another episode of Important Miscellaneous Talks. Today, very special guest with us. Please introduce yourself.
What's up? Thanks for having me on the show. My name's Avery. I'm excited to talk about all things about me and hopefully learn something about you guys too.
All right. So, talk a little bit about your upbringing. Were finances constantly talked about, or that's something that you came into on your own?
Yeah, so when I was growing up, I don't think my family ever really emphasized the ideas of investing or building wealth, but the idea of saving money and being pretty frugal was always something at the forefront. We never really spent money on stupid things, I guess I would say.
Mhm.
So that's always been something that's pretty well ingrained into me. But the ideas of building wealth and figuring out good ways to invest are more newer in my life. Kind of figured that stuff out a little bit more after college.
So, where do you get your good financial habits from?
The financial habits of saving definitely came from the family for sure. Other than that, just piqued interest in this type of stuff that I like to read and learn about. So the type of books and whatever that I'm reading are typically about business, personal finance, investing in real estate. And that's just the kind of stuff that I like to read. Before, I never really liked reading, to be honest, until I
The-
picked up those kind of books and realized it was just the subject matter that I wasn't interested in. So
Did you study business and finance in college at all?
I actually studied math and statistics. So there was a little bit of economics courses that I took, but a majority of it was that math and stats. And it really wasn't until after school that I got interested in more of the entrepreneurial finance side of things.
What did you want to do with your career after high school?
After high school, I mean, I
Yeah.
didn't really know. The only thing I cared about so much after high school or going into college was playing Division I soccer. That was kind of the only goal I really had. So I ended up doing that. And then halfway through my college career, transferred out to a D3 program. But in terms of thinking about my after school career, what I was going to do wasn't really on the forefront. I just wanted to play professional soccer. That's all I really cared about when I was in high school.
How much did your major factor into your intelligence financially?
I mean, my major itself, I'm like not bad at math. I think it's definitely helpful having some base knowledge of math. I think what really helped me in that space was the fact that I struggled really hard through a lot of these really complex concepts. So when it came to figuring out numbers to, invest in real estate, is this property going to cash flow? It was a lot simpler than some of the stuff that I learned. So I had a really strong knowledge of running numbers, basic financial stuff that for sure helped me, as well as just the ability to figure out how to get around difficult learning concepts that I learned throughout college, most of which I don't use whatsoever today.
Hmm, interesting. How would you how would you start implementing some of these habits? Do you have kids?
I do not have kids, no.
You hope to have kids one day?
Yes.
Okay. So how would you start implementing some of your financial knowledge on them, if at all?
That's actually a very interesting question. Not really something I've thought about so much. I think it would probably just be a good idea to, start giving them either an allowance, a very small amount of money, or what seems like a little bit of money to them to they wanted to buy stuff, but also have them earn it around the house. So I
Mm.
guess that's something my parents did when I was younger. Like I'd be mowing the lawn or doing chores or dishes, whatever. An allowance was like a couple dollars a week or something like that. And I always saved onto it and put it in like a piggy bank. And I think that idea of saving stemmed from a lot of that. So doing something like that, but then also I think implementing some ideas about investing that money and letting it work hard for you, because there was the aspect of doing the chores, saving the money, putting it away, but I wasn't letting that money work hard for me. Not that you necessarily can when you're 5, 10-year-old kid, but maybe playing Monopoly and talking about how when you buy that house and people pay you to come by, that's just like a good learning lesson that I never really thought about as a kid, that you could impart that kind of wisdom onto your kids.
Why do you think financial literacy um, is not something that's pushed onto people, especially to a majority of Americans in this country? It seems it's not something that's commonly known amongst people.
Yeah, I think that's probably due in part to the fact that it really helps corporations and other people to make money based on people not knowing certain financial aspects of their life, or like saving money. Like, we live in a very consumeristic society,
Mm,
advertising and all that stuff. And obviously it helps corporations profit and stuff. And a lot of the school system is kind of designed for discipline and creating employees, which is kind of anti-entrepreneurial, and it obviously helps that benefit. In terms of it not being taught, I think it's also the people who are creating these systems that don't necessarily know a lot about it. It would probably take more of a massive mind shift in the people actually creating these different types of courses and systems and structures to actually impart that wisdom. But a lot of the people who might have financial knowledge, or want to make money in big ways, aren't necessarily thinking about how can they affect the school system. They're probably working on their businesses and stuff like that.
mm.
Are you Jewish at all?
Jewish? No.
Oh, okay.
Okay, random question. Where are you from?
I'm actually from Vancouver, Canada.
Interesting. Wow. You live there currently?
No, right now I live in North Carolina.
Got you, got you.
That's right now.
What's that?
The Canada's going through it right now.
Yeah, there's a lot going on.
Was that an easy Well, what age did you move to North Carolina?
Well, I actually just moved here about 6 months ago. When I went to college in the US for college soccer, that is when I moved. So when I was 18, that was in the Northeast, so New Hampshire and Maine area. And then my first job out of school was in Boston. And I was in Boston for the last 2 or 3 years until I moved down here.
So how old are you?
I just turned 27.
Wow. I thought you were a lot closer to 30. Wow, you're doing pretty well.
That's pretty close to 30.
Well, was that transition easy for you from Canada to the US? And which one would you say in your opinion is better?
That's a fun question. I mean, the transition from Canada to US, they're like both culturally fairly similar places. Like, you can do a lot of the same kind of things. The biggest differences, I think, between Canada and US is, in the US it's definitely easier from like a loan banking perspective, financial perspective. If you wanted to make more money, a lot of like investing and stuff like that is just easier in the US. I like Canada a lot because it's a really beautiful country with, lots of nature, and I'm into that kind of thing. Um, the idea of people being nicer might be true in some parts, but it's not like people in the US aren't nice as well. Like, I'm down in the South now in North Carolina, and people are very pleasant, nice, that whole front porch vibe. And there's equally other places in the US where people aren't nice, or like people in Canada are not nice either. But I think the biggest difference is really the money aspect. Like, I talk a lot about FHA loans and buying properties with 3.5% down, and the idea of fixed rate mortgages and all that stuff really doesn't exist outside of the US. So there are a lot
Mhm.
of cool systems in place that make it more attainable here, to do that kind of thing.
What made you start TikTok?
Well, actually, I started my YouTube channel back in January 2021, and things kind of shot up pretty quick from my perspective. It was in April that I got the requirements in order to start getting monetized, which is 1,000
Wow.
subscribers and 4,000 watch hours. And then I shot up to like 6,500 subscribers pretty quick in like July. And then I basically had flat and or negative months for a few months. And then one of my good friends, who's also on TikTok talking about financial stuff, was just blowing up. He's got 1 million followers now. John's Finance Tips is his name. And I just figured I'd give it a go. And so I started it around November, and it seems like a really good platform to be on just for that organic growth, and has definitely helped a little bit spark back some life into my YouTube channel, as well as some other things. So that's kind of why I started it.
What made you get into real estate?
Well, so I graduated in May of 2018, and then in the summer, well, actually my first day on the job, I remember showing up, being really excited, got to my desk at like 7 o'clock, had already worked out, like ready to go, take on the corporate world. And then my boss showed up at 9:30 with my computer. So I just sat there for 2.5 hours doing nothing. And I just was really bored and had all of this free time, started reading some of those books. And one of the books was about real estate and how you could retire on real estate. And it led me on to this website, Bigger Pockets, which is all about, it's like social media for real estate investors, and kind of a lot of it spurred from that moment.
How would you,
Yeah.
for someone that wants to get into real estate, like real estate for dummies, what would be the first step? How could they get their foot in the door?
So if you're trying to do something like I did, which is known as house hacking, where you can buy a 1 to 4 unit building, condo, single family, or these 2 to 4 unit small multifamilies, you can use this FHA loan, 3.5% down. Obviously area dependent, that can still be some money. Like I was in the Boston area, so my first down payment was still $18,000, which can still be a lot of money for someone trying to get their foot in the door. Obviously a lot less than the couple $100,000 that a true investor might need to buy the same type of property. But another way, if you have like no money and are really just trying to hustle and all you have is time, I think the best way to do it is if you were to connect with someone who's in your area, and you can find people on websites like Bigger Pockets, or you can go to real estate networking events and find these people who, have themselves a portfolio. They don't necessarily have the time anymore to go find deals or like do the grunt work of managing stuff. So you could try to network with them, be their partner, show that you have that hunger, that time, and you don't necessarily have that money. And, they have all this expertise and they can help you, and you can go help them find deals. And you could get maybe like a 5-10% stake of equity in their deals, because you're doing all of this work for them. Plus you're going to learn from them. And then maybe you're going to start having some of your own money, as well as do more deals with that person. And that way you can kind of get in with not having any money.
So what about, because I have a question, what about with a VA loan?
What about the VA loan?
Because that's what I have. And real estate is something that I always wanted to get into. And like this year, I really want to purchase my like my first property.
Mm-hmm.
I want to make revenue from basically like how you said of probably getting a duplex or a quadruplex and basically renting it out, or have people living there renting it out, or like Airbnb. So I know with the VA loan, it's different for us because I don't have to put anything down. They don't require to put anything down. It's just really based on credit score, credit history, and if you have a source of income to pay the mortgage.
Mm-hmm.
So how would someone like myself or for veterans out there, what would you suggest?
Yeah, so I think exactly what you're describing. You have that ability to do the 0% down loan, which is very awesome, great benefit. And there's also no PMI or that private mortgage insurance associated with that loan, which is also awesome, can really lower your monthly mortgage cost as well. The only thing that I believe there exists with the VA loan is there's some type of funding fee, and it can sometimes almost cost as much as a down payment, depending on where you are. Not something I'm 100% familiar with, but there definitely are still some costs and closing costs and stuff like that. But I still think it would be less than an FHA loan. But if you can, find, like you said, the duplex, quadruplex, whatever, get in there with your 0% down loan and not have PMI, it can probably work out pretty well for you compared to someone like me who doesn't have the VA loan accessible to be able to put that money, not have to put money down. and get into the place. But I think that's 100% the best place to start, because you're living in the property. You have to learn about property management. If there's an issue, you're right there already. It just makes things a lot easier compared to if you were trying to start some big thing or buy an apartment complex right away or whatever it may be.
So, what would you recommend to people that want to buy homes, but their credit is not where it needs to be? Their credit is holding them back.
Yeah, so for a lot of those products, I know the FHA loan, you need a 580. And then I think the VA loan and other conventional loans are like 620 and up. I mean, in order to get your credit score up, there's no real way around it. You got to get rid of the debt, pay off stuff. There are strategic ways that I'm not super familiar with myself that I know you can get rid of collections or other debt that you might have on your report. But really the things that lenders like to see is that you have usually a couple mix of accounts, like 3 accounts, and you just pay everything off on time and in full, and that you don't use more than 30% of the credit limit that you have available. So I honestly use even less than that. And the less of your credit that you use, the better your score can be, and quickly. Actually, when I bought my first property, I only got my first credit card because I really wasn't thinking about this kind of stuff in July of 2018. And I went from having no credit score to having a 710 when I bought my first property like 8 months later, just because I barely used any of the credit. I opened a couple starter cards and just paid them off as soon as I bought something.
Wow. Getting rid of collections, you say?
Yeah, I have a friend who does this kind of stuff. He's all about credit and credit repair. It's not my expertise, but I know there's people out there who know how to kind of get rid of a lot of these things. Because a lot of cards too, if you're in, I forget what it's called, like charge off or whatever it may be, where the credit company has kind of given up on the fact that you're going to pay it back. They can, like, people can get rid of that off of your account somehow. Again, I'm not the expert on that specific thing, but there are ways to remove those negative impacts on your score.
I don't know if it's true. I don't really trust Credit Karma, but sometimes Credit Karma will, like, if you have the app, it'll say things like, "Oh, getting like getting someone to remove your credit won't help you." Uh, like weird stuff like that. Like I wasn't sure if that was like legit. Like people that say, "Oh, I can help you get rid of stuff on your credit report." Um, I was kind of like, on the fence about that. So that's really a real thing.
Yeah, from my understanding, it happens for people. Obviously, the most easy route to go is to just have those couple of credit cards, don't use too much of them, and pay them off. But if you're in like a really negative standing where your credit's in like low fours, low fives or something, and you really want to figure it out fast and you want to buy that property right away, it might be worth your time or money, if you have the investment, to pay some type of expert. Obviously vet them, like before you pay anyone any money, make sure it's legitimate, and talk to references who've gone through that kind of thing, because I'm sure there's people out there who are attempting to scam you for some type of money. But if you're really in a bind and like really want to buy that property, then you could do that kind of thing. But if you have, I don't know, a year or two or something like that, and you just want to work on your credit, chip away that debt, and get to start having that money for the down payment, then if you just simply pay it off on time and in full, then you should probably get there just fine.
How many properties do you currently own?
I own a duplex, triplex, as well as a single family that I'm sitting in right now. The single family will also be sort of a house hack. Haven't really set it up yet, but it has a detached garage, so I'm trying to finish that out and then Airbnb it. And also right now I'm in the process of buying another property. I'm pre-approved. Got a couple offers out, but nothing stuck yet. And I'm trying to make that an Airbnb.
Would you say you're a millionaire?
I am not yet a millionaire. I think I don't like to include my primary residence. So if you looked at the net worth there, it's I think last time I checked, it was like 625. But if you included the primary residence, which again, I don't really like to, it's closer to 800.
Mm.
Like your net worth?
Yeah, net worth.
It's pretty dope, man.
I'd
You
wait.
Yeah.
you have a girlfriend?
Yeah, I've got a girlfriend.
Okay, because I was gonna ask you, how has the increased net worth, been with the women? Have more women come your way? Have more temptation come your way anyway?
I mean, you always get the random stuff on the internet. I will say there are probably more guys out there on the internet who DM me saying like, "Oh, you look so hot" or something. It's kind of
That's pretty
funny.
funny.
Yeah, it is pretty funny. I always get a chuckle out of those. But no, I've been with my girlfriend since college. Actually, she's been pretty invested in the real estate as well, which I'm very appreciative of.
Interesting.
Like on the very first property, actually. So she was the grade below me, and when I bought it, it was her like right around her spring break for her senior year, and she ended up helping me paint the place when it was her spring break senior year, which was pretty cool of her. And we also lived in the bottom floor was a 2-bed, the upstairs was a 4-bed, and so we lived in the 2-bedroom together. Plus, we had a roommate, and she was cool with having the roommate because it helped with costs and everything. So she's been pretty awesome to have along the way.
What?
That's fire.
That's fine. What made you so willing to commit early? Because one can argue, a young bachelor like yourself on the uprise should, play the field a little bit. So what made you want to commit to her so early?
I mean, she's just great. I mean, she's smarter than me. She makes good decisions. We complement each other well, and she's also just funny.
Mm.
Like I've not met that many girls that I've ever dated or hung out with. They're like actually funny, and she's actually funny.
For real. For real. You find a funny girl, you gotta keep her, man.
Yeah.
For real.
For real. How important would you say is mindset when it comes to all this stuff?
I mean, I think really important, even in the last couple of years, I've been trying to shift my mindset. I was always on, and I think it's important when you start like the ultimate saving, like really penny pinching, saving everything you can so you can get that property under control and get it going. But like just having that abundance mindset, knowing you can do it, even though there's a bunch of things that you do not know. And you can take as many courses, read as many books, listen to as many podcasts as you want, but there's going to be certain situations that you just don't know are going to happen and you're going to run into, and just being okay with that happening. Like there's always things I'm learning all the time that it's kind of fun, and you figure it out along the way, and you just got to be okay with screwing up, messing up. That's obviously a big part of the mindset. And the other part is just thinking bigger, like how can I do this? That's obviously a very important thing. Like I think at every junction I've ever had, and someone has said no, or this isn't working or something, I don't just fall off and get sad about it. I always figure out, okay, like what are we going to do? Might not happen today, but like what can I do to make this work? And that's like every day in life, no matter what's happening, like every little situation I'm thinking, how can I not? Oh, I can't do it.
With you mentioned something about. I'm sorry. Let's go ahead.
How would you describe your daily routine?
Daily routine. Well, I still have a full-time job, so the weekdays and weekends are a little bit different. Weekdays, I'm usually up at like 5:45 or 6, and then I like to do a little meditation, and then I get a workout in, and then coffee. Like to do some gratitude stuff as well. Mainly that's out loud. Something I'm trying to put in a little bit more, putting like those big goals, there for me to read a little bit more affirmations and stuff. Haven't really done it so much, but I think that visualization can be a little bit more powerful. And then usually throughout the workday, I have work, lunchtime, and like downtimes I'll be making TikTok videos, or I might shoot a YouTube video or write a script or something like that. And then come the end of the day, making dinner, and then usually more like YouTube or TikTok stuff, or working on some other things on the business, or checking out investments, or I host a networking event, go to those kind of things in the afternoon. I also do some coaching. So every other Wednesday I host a group session. So those are some other kind of things that I'm doing in the evening. But if there's a time where my girlfriend wants to hang out or I want to call my parents or do stuff like that, that is always going to take precedence. And then I think the biggest thing that has helped me like move forward and seem like I'm working really hard when it feels like to me that I'm just kind of, I could work harder, I guess. Like you could work every
We
hour of
all
the day
can.
and not sleep. Yeah, 100%. But I just also basically my Saturday and Sunday, I just use as a work day, but
Mm.
for my business, not my W-2 job. So I'm usually working anyway, like 6 to 8 hours on a Saturday and Sunday. And I still feel like I have plenty of time to relax and hang out and do stuff and go out. It's just a different thing on the weekend than the weekday.
So what keeps you going? Because there's an argument to be made that you're ahead of a lot of people your age. So what's the driving force between for you to keep going to put in those extra hours and those extra reps on the weekends?
Yeah, I think it really just is the ability to hang out with family more. I think too, like my own family that I'll hopefully have at some point, as well as my parents and my other family, like close family. I'd like to be able to take trips with my parents while they're still young enough to do cool things and mobile and stuff like that. So if I wanted to just take a week where I can go somewhere else and hang out with them, I want that to be a thing. And then when I have my own kids, just like I want to coach their soccer practice or take them wherever, pick them up from school, things like that, where I don't have to be tied down to a specific schedule that's someone else's, but maybe I've started a business or have done something that might be viewed as risky, but because I have these other investments to fall back onto, I don't feel like it's so stressful and I don't bring that into my life when I want to try new pursuits.
So
Um,
would you say that freedom is probably one of the bigger driving forces for you to continue striving for greatness?
Yeah, I think for sure that freedom and just knowing and probably hopefully no one on my job will listen to this, but like when I do my work that isn't my job, it's very exciting. Like I love it. I'll do my coaching calls and it, I might be tired because they start at 7 at night, but come 8 o'clock, I'm buzzed in, I'm super passionate, just gives me a lot of energy. So just being able to do stuff that gives me a lot of energy, like I love helping people and answering their questions about finances. It just makes me feel more alive and excited. So that as well, just getting to the point where that's all I'm doing and being excited about that stuff is kind of definitely what helps me want to keep pushing my social media and the other kind of stuff that I'm working on.
um, you seem to be interested in sports, soccer specifically. When did your love like for soccer start? Like, how did you get into that?
So I'd say pretty much every Canadian kid signs up for soccer and hockey, of course, hockey. And so I'm the youngest in my family, and I basically just did everything that my older brother did until I was about 12. He was a hockey goalie. He actually played college hockey. And I decided that at that point, and my mom was like, okay, I can't drive you to all of these sports, so pick one. So I decided to pick soccer. And I kind of always really liked it and found it exciting, loved watching Premier League soccer. And it was something that I always found easy to, get up early and play or stay up late, or when I was in and around the house, just kicking a ball all the time. Even when I was in high school, I remember a lot of typical days. I would wake up before school, play for like an hour on my own, go to school, go to practice, and then do a workout. And like it was just fun because I enjoyed doing it. So I still love watching soccer too, but I try not to too much because it's usually on the weekends when I'm trying to work on stuff.
Definitely. Yeah, and early in the morning too here. So, can you say about for me, please?
I've been living in the US for 8 years, so I don't know if the accent's there, but I mean, about is how I would say it.
You
Okay.
don't say A?
A little bit. I mean, it's usually the emphasis of the easiest example is, oh, like it's really hot out, eh? I don't use Fahrenheit. I can't. It's not been internalized into my, like if you told me it was 60 degrees out, I would have some idea. But if you told me it's 15 degrees Celsius, I know exactly what to wear, like what's going on. I can't do the Fahrenheit.
Interesting. Interesting. Well, what would you say is the number one investment that people should invest in now for the future?
I always think real estate is amazing. I mean, there's a lot of new stuff out there. Cryptocurrency craze was kind of last year, plus NFTs and stuff. I'm invested in a couple NFT projects, and they're pretty cool. Highly speculative, but it's the space that can for sure make you money. But I think no matter what, however much money I made somewhere else, I would always bring it back to real estate, just because there's so many benefits of it. Like, your property will go up in value. Someone else pays down your loan. You make money every single month if you bought the right building through cash flow. And there's also just amazing tax write-offs and deductions. And it's not 100% passive, but like, it's pretty, for the amount of work that you do, it's pretty rewarding return from a monetary aspect.
What are some misconceptions that people have about real estate?
I would say the biggest thing, and this always happens when I make a video about real estate, is, oh, but the tenants are going to trash your house, or, oh, you're going to have to take calls to fix a toilet in the middle of the night, stuff like that. And I mean, I've had to fix a couple toilets, but it's never been in the middle of the night. And even if there was an issue with the toilet in the middle of the night, I think someone would get through to the morning if they really needed to. But also, a lot of it is your systems and stuff. So I still manage my properties that are in Boston. I don't pay someone else to manage them. And if there's an issue and the tenant texts me, I just text the handyman, and I'm good friends with the handyman, and he's got the lock code, the lockbox pass, and like just gets the key from there, and I trust him. And then he says, okay, it'll be this much money, and I pay him. And that, from my perspective, only takes a couple of minutes. So it's not really a big deal. And then in terms of tenants ruining your stuff, I'm sure that's very possible, and like, they can trash the house, but it also highly depends on the type of product you are buying and offering. So if you're buying a really crappy house in a not so great area and you keep it really crappy, like, the people who are going to move in may not be the best. But if you can buy a place in maybe a decent area, fix it up, make it look nice where people want to move in, you're going to get good people, and you screen them properly. A lot of people I know don't really screen tenants very well, which I find very interesting. I just went through the process again. And something I always do, because it asks for it on my applications, is that you put references of people you work with or past landlords. And I actually just call them. I know a lot of people don't actually call the references, but I just call and get an idea. Because like, credit, having a high credit score, good income, and all of that stuff can obviously be very good, and you want that. There's a lot of people who have those credentials that on paper look like they would pay and be good, that aren't good. And actually, one of my tenants who moved in recently, he only had a 510 credit score, but he was just so excited about the place, and he had just come off of a divorce. And I just knew he'd be a really good person. And he's been in for about a year now, and he loves the place, treats it super well, and he always pays on time. So there's also that aspect as well.
With buying a place, I know buying it is one thing, but maintaining it is another. So how would someone go about that? Because it takes money to maintain.
Yeah, of course. And hopefully you've bought the house with maybe like a little bit of a buffer. I definitely actually didn't with my first one. I mean, I lucked out in that there wasn't like a major issue within the first couple of months or anything like that, where I know some people might buy a house and then the whole heating system breaks and then they go fix it. But hopefully when you're buying the place and you're doing your analysis, there's enough rent coming in that's covering the mortgage, repairs, maintenance, potential vacancy costs, and like, then you're still also making money on top of it. So theoretically, the cost of the rent should cover all of those repairs. But also, I think it's very important for people to do preventative maintenance. So every year I get my heating system serviced the same way you would take your car into the shop and get an oil change, and just other things like that that will keep your property running. And like, I get the gutters cleaned, because if you leave the leaves in and it rains and then it freezes, it can make your roof shingles start to pop off, and then you can have leaks. So just like little things that cost maybe a little bit of money at first, like not really much, but can save you lots of money down the road, as long as you keep it all maintained.
With you having several properties and like you said, you have some properties in Boston. I thought it would be easier to have like property management, like because I remember I was looking at a property and I spoke to someone, property management, and it's like instead of the tenant calling you about this and that, they can go through them. Wouldn't that be easier or cheaper?
I'm sure it would be easier from my perspective because then I wouldn't have to handle tenant calls and stuff like that. But they usually charge, depending on where you are, 8 to 10% of your gross rents or like a flat fee. And I find that it just wouldn't really be necessary. And I don't know what they do. Like I only spend a couple hours a month doing work in terms of answering calls
Mm-hmm.
or doing like accountant work on my properties. So it's really not that much. And I don't really want to give up that money that I would give a property manager because I just don't know if they would do that much. And also, I find that if you have a property manager, you still have to manage the property manager. Like if there's an issue, they're going to ask you, what should I do? So I feel like almost the tenant would text them and say, hey, this is wrong. And then they would let you know. And so you're already in the loop. And it's,
Oh,
if I
okay.
already have the system set up where all I do is contact the handyman or I have trusted electricians, plumbers, all of these tradespeople that I feel confident will not like ruin the house and I've worked with before and I know them, I don't mind giving them the lockbox code. And then someone who I like my handyman is actually a good friend of mine. So he'll change the lockbox code sometimes so that I don't have to worry about that. So I just, yes, it would make my life easier if I had property management, but I don't think the cost benefit is not there for me yet.
Do you think with do you think as you gain more properties and maybe down the line, let's say hypothetically you have like 200 properties, do you think then it'll be worth it to invest in property?
Yeah, 100%, for sure. Like I definitely don't want to manage properties forever. Even those other, like even if I only stuck with the amount of properties I have now, in a few years or whatever, like once I actually have real responsibilities, because right now I don't. It's just me and my girlfriend. Like I don't have kids. My job is not crazy, so I can still handle this kind of stuff, and it doesn't feel like a burden. But as soon as I were to have kids or like want to focus on more important things with my time, then I would 100% want to take on the property management.
What are some books that you would say has been the most impactful in your life, if any?
So that very first one that I read, mainly just because it taught me about real estate, was called "Retire on Real Estate" by Kai Anderson. And that one's not a super well-known one, but it just talked about the power of utilizing real estate as an investment vehicle and for retirement. And it also spoke about that Bigger Pockets website and led me on to a lot of other stuff.
Mm.
Another one that I really liked was Set for Life by Scott Trench. He's kind of a hardo, but I love that. And he was like, if you're in the car, don't listen to music. Like you have to listen to audiobooks, podcasts. Every second of the day, you should be doing something to get to your goal, which can maybe make you burn out a little bit. But a lot of the ideas where he spoke about you're making this median salary, mainly like right after college or something, and how you can take this average salary and get to like a point where you've started house hacking, get to financial freedom, and then maybe have that abundance of making your salary really big. So this is kind of how I've tried to set up my life. And then another one that people often talk about that I read later on was Rich Dad Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki, which is very
Ask you
well
about.
known. What's that?
I was just about to ask you about that. Like, what's your take on that?
I mean, I think the book's really good. Definitely a good mindset shift book where you can start thinking about earning money in a different way rather than just trading your time for money, which is a very good thing to think about because it's better to get your money to work hard, not just trade your time for money all the time. Robert Kiyosaki is an interesting guy for sure. If you listen to some of the podcasts and shows he's been on, where he talks a lot about communism and stuff like that and taxes and debt. But overall, I think his messaging is good for wanting to build wealth. But I think he tries to say things that might be a little bit like off
Okay.
the rocker just so that he can stay a little bit relevant.
Mm.
Yeah.
So, what about these programs these days where it's like join us and we'll teach you the ins and outs of buying property, flipping houses, and we'll give you the knowledge and tool books. And what do you take on that?
Yeah, I mean, it totally depends on the person. I have certain things that I sell, not really. I mean, a little bit, like I have a free ebook and a free Discord group, but I do have this monthly mentorship group that's paid for, and the people in it find like there's a lot of value. I think it's honestly really cheap for what I'm offering, and they agree. But there are for sure a lot of people out there who are making these courses or have these like $5,000 masterminds, $10,000 masterminds or something where they don't even do it themselves and they're kind of making all of their money through this stuff. That those wouldn't be the people who I trust. Like if you want to learn about investing in real estate and you want to learn a specific strategy, if someone is selling a course, you want to make sure that they do it as well. Like maybe they did it for a while and they stop now. I would still want to do it with someone who is doing it in today's market because you are trying to buy in today's market. So I would only trust that kind of person. But there's definitely a lot of valuable people out there who have courses, and the money you put in would be less than the money that you should return if you actually implement what they're teaching you. But there's also a ton of people out there that have courses that are probably crappy, or they're not actually good and they may not know what they're doing, and you're going to feel like you're going to waste your money.
Yeah, and more times than not, it's probably a review on the course somewhere online if they're big enough. So they'll probably like give you a heads up on whether or not it's even worth your time.
Yeah, 100%. I would agree with that. Yeah.
What would you say is the best 5-year plan to become financially independent?
Uh, I would say 100%, like year one, two, figure out the saving and then figure out that one strategy that you feel like will get you there, get your foot in the door. For me, it was the house hacking, the real estate, and then just take the next couple of years and do that same thing again and again. And then while you're doing that same thing again and again, like once you start getting year 4 and 5 and whatever, and things kind of look like they're pretty flat and then they can go up pretty quickly. But in those years 4 and 5, I would say, and 3, really work on that abundance. Like, how can I take my salary from making 50,000 a year? Now I'm house hacking and living for free because I've saved them in year 2. And then how can I now make like 300, 500,000 a year? Like, who do I need to set myself up with, be in line with, so that I can make this actually my reality while you're still working on that one thing that you feel good about? Because I know a lot of people will start off, they want to save up. Maybe they pay for a course and then they lose half of the money that would be a down payment. They don't get it. And then they're just like trying all of these different things and they don't focus on one thing. And then they never actually do anything. So if you really just focus on that one strategy that you feel like you get and makes sense to you and you're passionate about, like take that off or take that on and then figure out how you can make it bigger, scale up, and really increase your income so that everything else just becomes easier. Because obviously when you have more money, it's a lot easier to do this stuff.
I always hear in discussions that some people say you need a license to do real estate, and some people say you actually don't. So which one is it?
I mean, if you just want to be a real estate investor, you wouldn't need a license or to be an agent or anything like that. I mean, you could, because if you're on the buy side or sell side, you could make those commissions on the properties that you own. But then you also have to be an agent and work on that kind of stuff and take the courses and whatever, which could be worth it to some people. I don't find it for my particular situation worth it. Maybe if you're flipping a lot of houses or something like that, where there's a bunch of transactions, it might be worth it in your case because you can get the commissions on either side. But if you're looking for like longer term growth of multifamilies or like just buy and hold type of investments, then you really don't need to. You could again, but I don't think it's a necessity.
A 25-year-old with no sense of direction but wants to improve his life. What advice would you give him to for the first step to getting on the right path?
I would for sure say like you can work backwards. So like if you feel like you have no direction and you don't know what's going on, like what would you think your life looks like if it has direction? Like, where do you want to be? What does that look like? And then you can kind of work backwards from there. And I think for sure the first thing, which a lot of people don't necessarily have, is like make sure your relationships, your personal life, your health, and like how you feel during the day are going to be more important to set up before you can worry about like what is the best investment to make. Because if your head isn't right, you don't have energy, you're not excited about what you're doing, you're just going to kind of drone on and not feel good. So if you can feel good, like the financial stuff will just be a lot easier, because it can be stressful sometimes buying your first property or figuring stuff out. So if you have like good health and you feel good about your relationships and stuff, then that obviously makes it easier to focus on the finances.
How how do you get into a daily routine? Because one of my horrible habits is checking my phone first thing in the morning, which I know I shouldn't do, and I preach that you shouldn't do it, but it's a very bad habit. So you mentioned your daily routine. How do you implement that consistently?
I guess I would just feel so off without it at this point that it
Mm,
wouldn't be right. But I guess from the beginning, I mean, even in your situation about the phone, like the simplest thing that you could probably do is just get an alarm clock that's $5 from wherever, and then keep your phone in a different room.
I do. I got an
And
Alexa,
no, you do.
and I charge my phone in a different room. Yeah, I get
Oh
up,
wow,
I go
okay.
get it, and go back down to sleep.
I think, yeah, I mean, like the first, like if you're thinking, I mean, something that I might struggle with sometimes, like I love a little dessert or something after dinner, but maybe I shouldn't always be doing that. And like the first couple of days, I think, are always the hardest because you're so used to doing that
Mhm.
other thing. And if you can kind of just push past it, and there's usually this like 20, I find about 20-minute period where if you get past that, then you stop thinking about it and you move on. And then after you've done this habit for a couple of days, then the next few days are easy. And after you've done it for like a week, 2 weeks, then it's, you feel wrong without it. So if you can, like the first few days or weeks are going to be the hardest part, but then once it's part of your thing, you feel like it's missing from your life if you don't do it.
Okay, maybe I'll just try.
What
Yeah.
what are some tips that you would give for people that have trouble saving money? What's the most effective way that you would recommend?
So I think, I mean, it also depends on your situation. Like some people are living paycheck to paycheck because like that's really all they can get through because that's their life. Like they can't really do much better in terms of saving. Like then you'd have to work on increasing your income. But if you're someone who's living paycheck to paycheck, because you're kind of just throwing away money and maybe spending too much on eating out or something like this, I would say focus on the big three expenses that people have in their life, which is housing, transportation, and food. Because often people might start saving and then they cancel out on hanging out with friends or doing stuff they actually enjoy. And then they get this notion that saving sucks because you're taking away all the things you value in your life because you're saving on these other items that aren't actually going to be big saving ticket items. But if you're, living in a luxury apartment downtown, wherever you are, and you're living paycheck to paycheck, first thing you do is just even live in that same apartment complex, but with a roommate, and you've saved like 400 or 500 bucks. So like just focusing on those big things so that you can save actual money and then not taking away the stuff that you care about. Same thing with like a car. Maybe you can get rid of it and take the bus, public transit, or ride a bike. Food, you can learn how to cook fun food at home for a while rather than eat out all the time, stuff like that.
How important is discipline to you in your daily life?
I mean, I think really important, especially with those habits. It's super easy today to just get scatterbrained, or I mean, I do it sometimes too, where you're just scrolling on TikTok and you're not really thinking.
Hmm.
But like when I every single morning when I go work out, I don't want to do it, but afterwards I just feel good. Like it just sets the day up right. You just feel good. So I think keeping that discipline, I just know that even in the moment I don't want to do it or it doesn't feel like the thing I like. I'd rather just sit down, but like the after effects always make me feel better when I'm following that sense of discipline.
What helps you push through that mental blockade when every morning you don't want to do it, but yet you still do it? What pushes you to do it?
It's really just that, like, every single time, like, same every single morning, it's the same thing. I put on my workout clothes. I'm like, man, this sucks. I go outside and I'm about to start my workout. I'm like, I don't want to do it. And then you're 2 minutes in and you just forget about it. And then you're in it. And then afterwards, I feel fantastic. It's just like in my head, getting through that first portion, I just
Hey,
know that once I'm in it, I won't really think about it anymore. And then afterwards, it's just that reward. I always feel good. Like when you're in the, if I go into the shower after I've worked out, it always just feels nice compared to if I didn't. So I think it's just me knowing that afterwards I'm going to feel a lot better.
got you. Well, that's all the questions I have for you, man. I appreciate you sincerely.
Yeah, I mean, thanks for having me on. Thanks for reaching out to me on Instagram. I always like talking about this stuff. So it's good to talk to you guys.
Thank
Thank you
you.
Yeah.